Nickel seems to be in much shorter supply or availability than, let's say, iron or lithium in Tesla's mind. So what do you think about his nickel sourcing? It was almost basically exactly a year after he asked miners to mine more nickel, he signed this big agreement with BHP.
Welcome back to Rockstock Channel, and thanks for checking in. Before we launch into the interview, we'd like to thank all our Patreon sponsors. And for those of you who are new, share a bit about us. RK Equity is an advisory firm run by Rodney, Hooper, and me, Howard Klein. We are exclusively focused on raising awareness about companies producing or developing the next generation critical raw materials that are powering Tesla's EV battery energy transition. Please register your email at rkequity.com and follow Rodney and me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Please also subscribe to this channel, Rockstock Channel on YouTube, as well as Lithium Ion Rocks on SoundCloud for our podcasts. Please note, Rodney and me are not financial advisors or broker-dealers. Nothing you hear in this video is investment advice. Please do your own research and read the disclaimer at the end of this video or on our website. Thanks again for the support, and let's get into the video.
Tesla, to my mind, prefers to use incumbents in their supply chain. They do in the lithium market. You don't see, other than the spodumene concentrate offtake with Piedmont, being the only hard rocks, mine in the US, they prefer incumbents, and they've done exactly the same with nickel. And I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla encouraged BHP to do the Noront deal in Canada. They want to deal and know that they have serious money and technical skills and history in their supply chain. Nickel is under pressure. There's no doubt that, a year or two ago, Howard, most of the OEMs were still dismissing EVs. They were bad-mouthing them and saying that there was no use case. Now you're seeing companies committing to fully EV by 2030 in some instances. So competition for raw materials and battery cells is going to pick up.
There's been a lot of news in the market, but one in particular was Rio Tinto is announcing a $2.4 billion commitment to Jadar in Serbia.
Let's just be clear and let the listeners know this deposit was discovered by Rio's in 2004. Here we are 17 years later. It's not permitted, it's not built. They're making a commitment and it's still going to a referendum. Construction start next year, sounds ambitious, in first production in 26 and at nameplate by 2029. There's a project timeline for you, Howard, 25 years.
In construction in 2022, but first production in 2026, 4 years, and then another 3 years before they're at their commercial scale, 58,000 tons. It's an underground mine that must be, it's deep underground. It's huge, but that must be why it's so long, no?
Yes, and also, I don't know that they've quite done all of their feasibility on it. I'm not sure if they would start construction and sort of complete the feasibility. So you don't get a lot of detail on this. You're the one who follows politics more than me. Your thoughts on if a project goes to a referendum?
I have no idea about Serbian politics, but I do know that there's been a lot of noise about the resistance to the project. So by Rio Tinto announcing that they're going to invest $2.4 billion, it kind of shows the country and its citizens, what's at stake, that they have this potential there. There was one of the analysts on the call, asked, about that. Isn't it sequencing backward, right? Shouldn't you get the approval first and then announce the final investment decision? And the answer I'll put up on the board wasn't entirely convincing. So I agree with you, Rodney, that there's an element of kind of virtue signaling to the Serbian population here. I think there's also potentially some virtue signaling from a broader ESG point of view. Rio Tinto kind of entering the battery materials space with a project. I think it was last year that they announced that they were spending like $250 million on the feasibility study. They had reached pre-feasibility study. I don't know if they're fully at feasibility study yet. I think there's also some signaling on the boric acid side because a competing project in Ioneer has a similar amount of boron. If you look at the lithium is 58,000 tons per annum. The boric acid, I think, was like 131,000 tons, per annum. And Rio, I think it's a duopoly in the boron market. and there's an element of protecting that duopoly, or maybe scaring some people away from financing Ioneer potentially.
Rio's is printing cash. I mean, you're a shareholder, you've seen how much they're making in iron ore. So they have an opportunity to redirect cash flows from what has been, I mean, super profits in iron ore, right?
70% EBITDA margins, I think, in the first half. I mean, by the way, they announced this deal with Jadar in connection with their first half results, right? So it gave them a good talking point. But I think I have to look at it, but I think they made $12 billion in profits in the first half. So $2.4 billion for this project is I don't know, 1/5 of their first half profits. It's absolutely crazy how small lithium is. I really hope the referendum does go through, and I hope that they do build this project, and I hope that they get more aggressive in coming into lithium. I mean, there's been some speculation that I think Simon Moores at Benchmark said, Rio doesn't do anything unless they want to be one or two, and he would expect, some M&A. The only M&A that I could see that them doing would be, let's say, Albemarle, right? If they wanted to be, one or two in the market. If you remember last year, they had an opportunity to come into Greenbushes. They've had an opportunity to kind of come into Pilbara, right in their Western Australian backyard, similar to iron ore, and they haven't done that. So I'm skeptical overall about how committed they are to being major players. And I'd be very, very surprised if Rio Tinto were to do a deal with a lithium junior, right? You're right. They've been looking at Jadar. It's a big project for a lot of years. They need to kind of get that right. Almost very expensive from it wouldn't be accretive from an EV to EBITDA basis. They've been very, very conscious about spending capital efficiently. They pay a 6% dividend yield, and they don't want to repeat the mistakes they made, with Rio Alcan in the past. There was a tweet from Sarah Marisol at Tesla, suggesting, in connection with, our client, Talon.
I think that nickel is something that Rio's can probably get its head around more. There are quite a few assets in Australia as well that are probably worth looking at, and they will, once all is said and done, realistically have a 40% stake in the Tamarack project with Talon. People shouldn't take the latest signaling by Elon Musk that he's backing off on nickel. He'll take all the nickel he can get. It's just a question of how much can he get.
What's interesting about BHP and Noront, there was a bid from Twiggy Forrest, and then BHP came in with a 129% premium bid. Now compare that, and that was, I don't know, $350 million. If we look at our nickel scoreboard compared to the lithium scoreboard, we've always said that nickel has just a larger universe of potential buyers. BHP coming into Noront and BHP signing a long-term deal with Tesla we talk about higher love. We've achieved higher love significantly with a number of lithium producers and some lithium developers, but the nickel stories have kind of gone sideways to down, in the second quarter. Elon Musk was talking about, Dogecoin and Bitcoin, but not about nickel. But now that nickel's, in the frame again, Talon was up a lot on the Noront news. I see Rio Tinto doing Jadar as, potentially, looking to do more in battery materials, battery metals.